The Galactic Empire's fleet hovered above Earth, its massive warships casting shadows over the wounded planet below. Victory banners flashed across enemy screens, their admirals celebrating what they believed was the final defeat of humanity. Across the galaxy, news of Earth's downfall spread like wildfire. Billions of alien citizens cheered as broadcasts showed the last remnants of Earth's defense fleet burning in the cold void of space. The Empire's commanders stood tall, convinced that no force in the universe could challenge them now. On the surface, the once great cities of Earth lay in ruins. Smoke rose from shattered buildings, the streets littered with debris and silence. The resistance had fought bravely, but against the overwhelming firepower of the Galactic Empire, they had no chance. Enemy troops marched through the remains of human civilization, securing what was left. The war was over. Earth belonged to the Empire now. High above, aboard the Empire's flagship, Grand Admiral Xaltorin gazed out at the broken planet. He had waited for this moment for years. Humanity had been a nuisance, stubborn, unpredictable, and too proud for their own good. But now, they were defeated. He raised a glass of rare Zelfar wine, his scaled lips curling into a victorious smirk. "We have crushed their spirit," he declared. "Let this be a warning to any who would defy the might of the Empire." His officers roared in approval, their laughter echoing through the grand chamber. Across the fleet, the mood was the same. Soldiers celebrated in their barracks, pilots boasted about their kills, and officers relaxed, assured that no more resistance would come. The Emperor himself had sent his congratulations. Earth was just another world added to the growing list of conquered civilizations. The war had been longer than expected, but the result was inevitable. However, deep in the shadows of space, beyond the range of enemy sensors, something moved. Invisible to the Empire's scanners, hidden in the darkness between the stars, a fleet lay waiting. Humanity was not finished. They had not surrendered. What the enemy saw as their last ships burning in space had only been a deception. The true strength of Earth had never been on display. It had been concealed, hidden away in places the Empire never thought to look. Admiral Elias Kane sat in the command chair of the U.S. Valkyrie, his gaze locked onto the holo display in front of him. He watched as the enemy fleet remained in position, unaware of the doom that lurked just beyond their sight. His expression was unreadable, but deep inside, a fire burned. The Empire had made a fatal mistake. They had declared victory too soon. Kane turned to his officers, his voice calm yet carrying the weight of the storm that was about to be unleashed. "Are the warships in position?" Commander Renfield, his second in command, nodded. "Every single one, sir. Cloaking systems are holding. The enemy still hasn't detected us." A slow, dangerous smile formed on Kane's face. "Good. Let them celebrate. Let them believe they've won. We'll show them the price of underestimating humanity." The fleet was unlike anything the Empire had ever encountered. While Earth's conventional forces had been wiped out, these warships were different, crafted in absolute secrecy, designed for one purpose: vengeance. Their hulls were lined with cutting-edge stealth technology, making them ghosts in the void. Their weapons were devastating, designed not just to destroy but to send a message. The Empire had brought war to humanity's doorstep. Now, humanity would bring war to them. Back on Earth, the resistance lay in hiding. Civilians who had survived the invasion huddled in underground bunkers, whispering in fear of the enemy soldiers above. Some believed it was truly over, that there was no hope left. But others, those who had heard the last desperate transmission from the hidden fleet, held on to a different belief. The war was not over. Humanity was not defeated. Something was coming, something the Empire could never prepare for. In the orbiting flagship, Grand Admiral Xaltorin took another sip of his wine, completely unaware that, far above his head, 1,000 silent warships had begun their approach. The shadows of space had opened, and from them, Earth's true response was about to emerge. They thought they had won. They were wrong. The Galactic Empire's fleet remained in orbit, its warships gleaming against the backdrop of space. The celebrations continued, messages of victory spreading through the Empire's communication networks. On occupied Earth, alien soldiers tightened their grip on human cities, securing what they believed to be the remains of a defeated species. Their commanders walked the streets without fear, certain that no further resistance would come. Yet, beyond the range of their sensors, hidden in the vast darkness of space, humanity's last hope was preparing to strike. The war had not ended. It had only just begun. Aboard the UNS Valkyrie, Admiral Elias Kane stood before the bridge crew, his gaze fixed on the holographic display of the enemy fleet. The Empire's warships outnumbered them 10-1, their firepower overwhelming. But numbers would not decide this battle. Strategy, deception, and ruthless precision would. "They think we're gone," Kane said, his voice steady. "They think Earth is broken, that we have no fight left. We will remind them who we are." Commander Renfield nodded. "All ships are in position. Cloaking fields holding. The enemy has no idea we're here." Kane exhaled slowly. "Then we begin. Send the signal." Across the hidden fleet, orders were relayed in silence. Warships, dark and ghostly against the void, adjusted their trajectories. They drifted closer, unseen, undetected. Advanced stealth technology masked their presence, preventing even the most sophisticated enemy scanners from registering them. Humanity had learned from past defeats. This time, they would not fight on the Empire's terms. On the enemy flagship, Grand Admiral Xaltorin stood in his lavish command chamber, still basking in victory. His officers reported no signs of human activity, just the quiet, dying embers of a war already won. He smiled, pleased with his triumph. But then, something changed. "Sir," a communications officer called out, "I'm detecting fluctuations in space, small disturbances, but..." Before he could finish, the first explosion erupted. A massive shockwave tore through the void, consuming one of the Empire's battleships in an instant. The bridge crew barely had time to react before another ship vanished in a blinding blast of fire and debris. Panic spread through the Empire's fleet. "Where is the attack coming from?" Xaltorin bellowed. His officers scrambled, their scanners frantically sweeping the void. But they found nothing. There was no enemy fleet, no warning, just death striking from the darkness. Then, from the shadows, the UNS Valkyrie emerged. It was the first warship to reveal itself, its sleek hull cutting through the void like a silent predator. A moment later, more ships materialized, one after another, a nightmare made real. Humanity's hidden fleet had arrived. On the Valkyrie's bridge, Kane's voice rang out. Fire at will. A barrage of missiles and kinetic rounds tore into the enemy's formation. Advanced railguns, built in secrecy for this very moment, unleashed devastation unlike anything the Empire had ever faced. The first wave of destruction left entire sections of the fleet crippled. Xaltorin's eyes widened in horror. This was impossible. Humanity was supposed to be defeated, yet here they were, striking with precision and power. "Return fire," he roared. The Empire's ships tried to retaliate, but the humans moved too fast. Their stealth tactics, their unpredictable formations, it was chaos for the Empire, but for humanity, it was calculated destruction. The battle had begun, and Earth's warships were proving why victory had never truly belonged to the Empire. Humanity had not been defeated. Humanity had been waiting. You said the battlefield was chaos. The Empire's once mighty fleet, which had hovered over Earth in triumph just hours ago, now burned in the void. Wreckage drifted through space, the shattered remains of warships torn apart by unseen enemies. The Galactic Empire had expected a clean victory, a final, crushing blow that would bring humanity to its knees. Instead, they had awakened something far worse. Aboard the UNS Valkyrie, Admiral Elias Kane watched the destruction unfold with cold precision. His fleet had struck hard and fast, using stealth and superior tactics to cripple the enemy before they could react. But the battle was far from over. The Empire still had numbers, and even with their losses, they were rallying. "They're adapting," Commander Renfield said, studying the tactical display. "More ships are falling back into defensive formations. They're trying to push us into a direct engagement." Kane's expression didn't change. "They want a fair fight." He leaned forward, his voice sharp. "We're not giving them one. Execute Phase 2. Across the fleet, new orders were transmitted. The human warships adjusted their attack patterns, vanishing once again into the darkness. Their cloaking systems activated, their engines dimming as they disappeared from enemy sensors. The Empire's commanders, already struggling to understand what was happening, were now truly blind. On the enemy flagship, Grand Admiral Xaltorin was seething. His forces had never been challenged like this before. The Empire's military was the strongest in the galaxy, its war doctrine built on overwhelming firepower and absolute control. And yet, against these humans, none of it seemed to matter. "Where are they?" he growled, his claws digging into the armrest of his command chair. His officers scrambled to provide answers, but there were none. Humanity's warships were ghosts, appearing only to strike before vanishing again. The Empire's fleet was left chasing shadows, wasting firepower on empty space. Then, the next wave of attacks began. Out of the darkness, missiles streaked toward the Empire's formations, detonating with devastating force. Railgun rounds, moving faster than the eye could track, tore through hulls, turning entire warships into fireballs. The Empire's defenses were useless. By the time they located a target, it was already too late. The human fleet had no intention of fighting the way the Empire wanted. They were predators, and this was their hunt. On the ground, the alien soldiers occupying Earth watched the sky with growing unease. Reports were flooding in, contradictory, confusing. The fleet was under attack. No, the fleet was winning. No, ships were disappearing. The truth was impossible to grasp, but one thing was clear: something had gone terribly wrong. Humanity had not been defeated. The resistance forces hidden across the planet received the same reports, and a slow, burning hope spread through them. They had been surviving, waiting, unsure if help would ever come. Now, they knew. Earth's warships had returned. The fight was not over. In one of the hidden bunkers beneath the ruins of New York, a young resistance fighter named Jonas stared at the flickering holoscreen. It displayed a scrambled message from the fleet, but one phrase was clear: "Hold the line. We are coming." The message was simple, but it changed everything. The Empire had expected submission. Instead, they had awakened the full fury of humanity. And as the warships in orbit continued their brutal assault, it became clear this was no longer a battle. This was the beginning of humanity's revenge. The Empire's fleet was in full retreat. The once proud warships, symbols of galactic dominance, were now little more than burning wrecks drifting through the void. Those that remained operational scrambled to regroup, their commanders desperately trying to make sense of the nightmare unfolding around them. On the bridge of the UNS Valkyrie, Admiral Elias Kane stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the tactical display. The enemy was breaking, but he knew better than to assume the battle was won. The Empire still had resources, still had firepower, and most importantly, it still had Earth under occupation. "We have them on the run," Commander Renfield said, his voice edged with barely restrained excitement. "We could finish them here." Kane's expression remained cold. "No," he said, "not yet. We hit them hard, but they still outnumber us. If we push too far now, we risk losing everything." Renfield clenched his fists but nodded. "Then what's our next move?" Kane turned toward the holo display, where the image of Earth loomed beneath the wreckage of battle. "We take back our world." Orders were issued. The fleet adjusted course, descending toward the planet's surface. But Kane knew the battle for Earth would be different from the war in space. This wasn't about ambushes or hit-and-run strikes. It was about fighting through an entrenched enemy force that believed itself invincible. On the ground, the Empire's occupation forces were still struggling to understand what was happening. Reports of the fleet's destruction had begun to spread, but they refused to believe them. The idea that mere humans, primitive, fragile creatures, could challenge the might of the Empire was unthinkable. Yet the sky was proving them wrong. From the heavens, fire rained down. Human warships, moving with terrifying precision, unleashed targeted bombardments on key enemy strongholds. Alien command centers, supply depots, and orbital defense stations were turned to ash in an instant. And then the drop pods came. Across the planet, thousands of them broke through the atmosphere, streaking like meteors toward the ground. Inside each one, the elite human soldiers braced for impact, their weapons primed. They were outnumbered, but they didn't care. This was their planet, their war. The first wave struck in the ruins of New York. Pods slammed into the occupied city, shattering roads and sending shockwaves through enemy ranks. Before the dust had even settled, the doors burst open, and humanity's warriors emerged, guns blazing, eyes burning with fury. Jonas, the young resistance fighter, had been waiting for this moment. The second he saw the pods land, he grabbed his rifle and sprinted toward the battle. For months, the resistance had fought in the shadows. Now they had an army behind them. The Empire's soldiers, caught between orbital bombardments and a ground assault, panicked. They had spent months oppressing a broken people, never expecting those same people to rise up with such ferocity. The streets became a battlefield. Explosions rocked the city. Alien forces fell back, trying to regroup, but the humans gave them no chance. They fought like demons, relentless and unforgiving. In the heart of the chaos, Jonas found himself face to face with an alien officer, its 4 arms gripping an energy rifle. The creature sneered, its voice filled with arrogance. "You think you can take back this world?" it hissed. Jonas didn't hesitate. He raised his weapon and pulled the trigger. The officer collapsed, its body hitting the rubble with a dull thud. Jonas exhaled, his hand steady. "This world was never yours," he muttered. The battle raged on. Across the planet, humanity was rising. And in orbit, Admiral Kane watched it all unfold, his resolve hardening. The war wasn't over. But Earth was no longer the Empire's. The battle for Earth had turned into a nightmare for the Empire. What was supposed to be an easy occupation had become a brutal, unrelenting war. Human forces, fueled by rage and an unbreakable will, were driving the invaders back. Admiral Elias Kane stood on the bridge of the USS Valkyrie, watching the battlefield unfold below. Cities that had once been silent under alien rule now burned with the fire of rebellion. The enemy was breaking, but Kane knew this was only the beginning. The Empire would not simply abandon its prize. Enemy reinforcements inbound. Commander Renfield reported, his voice tight. Multiple warships dropping out of FTL on the far side of the moon. Looks like they sent a response fleet. Kane studied the incoming threat. The Empire had finally realized its mistake. Now, they were sending everything they had to crush humanity's uprising before it could spread. But it was too late. "Prepare for Phase 3, Kane ordered. "It's time we show them why they should have left us alone." Across the human fleet, new orders were transmitted. Ships repositioned, forming defensive lines. Stealth systems activated. Humanity had fought tooth and nail to get to this point, and they weren't about to let the enemy take back what they had stolen. On the ground, Jonas and the resistance fighters were still locked in combat. The streets of New York had become a war zone, filled with burning wreckage and the bodies of fallen soldiers. The Empire's forces were retreating, but they were far from defeated. A deafening roar shook the battlefield as alien dropships descended, carrying fresh troops to reinforce their failing lines. Jonas gritted his teeth, tightening his grip on his rifle. They weren't going down without a fight. Hold the line. He shouted to the fighters around him. "We have to buy time for the fleet." The humans dug in, taking cover behind rubble and destroyed vehicles. Blaster fire lit up the ruins as the two sides clashed in brutal, close-quarters combat. Jonas took down one enemy after another, but there were always more. The Empire's numbers were overwhelming. Then, from above, a thunderous explosion split the sky. A massive fireball engulfed one of the enemy's landing zones, vaporizing everything in its radius. A moment later, human gunships streaked overhead, raining down destruction on the alien forces. The fleet had come through. Jonas felt a surge of hope as human reinforcements arrived, pushing back the invaders with sheer determination. The battle was shifting again. Humanity refused to be conquered. In orbit, the Empire's reinforcements finally arrived, their massive warships emerging from the darkness. They expected an easy counterattack. They expected humanity to crumble under their might. Instead, they were met with fire. Human warships erupted from their hiding spots, unleashing devastating volleys of missiles and railgun fire. The enemy fleet reeled, caught completely off guard. The same tactics that had shattered the first wave of invaders were now being used again, with even greater precision. Admiral Zaltoran, still reeling from his humiliating defeat, was on one of the Empire's command ships. He watched in horror as his reinforcements were torn apart before they could even form a proper battle line. Humanity wasn't just fighting back. They were winning. "We underestimated them," one of his officers whispered. Zaltoran's claws tightened into a fist. "No," he snarled. "We provoked them, and now we're paying the price." On the Valkyrie, Admiral Kane gave the order that would seal the Empire's fate. Full assault. Drive them out of our skies. The battle that followed was brutal, but the outcome was never in doubt. The Empire had come expecting an easy victory. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy they could no longer control. One by one, the alien warships fell. Some exploded in massive fireballs. Others tried to flee, only to be hunted down by relentless human forces. The once mighty fleet of the Galactic Empire was being wiped from existence. And on the ground, the last remnants of the occupation forces were being crushed. Jonas stood atop the ruins of a fallen enemy command center, watching as the surviving alien soldiers surrendered. It was over. Earth was free. For the first time in months, humanity stood victorious. But as Admiral Kane watched the final enemy ship explode in orbit, he knew the war was far from over. They had won the battle. Now they had to prepare for what came next. "You said." The silence after the battle was deafening. Earth, scared and battered, stood victorious. The last remnants of the Empire's forces had either been destroyed, captured, or had flowed into the void. Humanity had done the impossible. They had taken back their world. On the bridge of the UNS Valkyrie, Admiral Elias Kane watched the burning wreckage of the enemy fleet drift through space. Victory should have felt satisfying, but he knew better than to celebrate. The Empire would not forget this humiliation. "Status report," Kane ordered. Commander Renfield scanned the tactical display. "Minimal casualties among our fleet. Ground forces report the last enemy stronghold in Asia has surrendered. Earth is officially ours again." Kane exhaled slowly. The war for Earth was over. But humanity's war with the Empire had only just begun. "We need to move fast," Kane said. "The Empire won't ignore this. They'll come back with everything they have." "Agreed," Renfield said. "The question is, do we wait for them, or do we take the fight to them?" Kane turned his gaze to the stars. The answer was clear. "We go to them," he said. "We end this war on our terms." Jonas stood in what was once an enemy command center, now littered with fallen banners and discarded weapons. The city around him was in ruins, but it was free. The resistance had won. As he looked up at the night sky, he saw human warships in orbit, patrolling like silent guardians. It was a sight no one would have believed possible just weeks ago. "You did good, kid," a voice said behind him. Jonas turned to see Colonel Vasquez, one of the leading officers of the resistance, approaching. Her armor was scorched from battle, but her eyes burned with determination. "It's not over yet, is it?" Jonas asked. Vasquez shook her head. "No, the Empire won't let this go. But now we have a choice. Do we wait for them to come back, or do we take the fight to them?" Jonas didn't hesitate. "We go after them." Vasquez grinned. "Good answer." Deep in the heart of the Empire, Supreme Warlord Saltoran stood in his private war chamber, staring at a holographic display of the battle. The defeat was undeniable. The losses were catastrophic. "Unacceptable," he growled, his claws digging into the metal console. "A species of primitives has disgraced us. They must be exterminated." His advisors remained silent, fearing his wrath. But one of them, a high-ranking strategist, finally spoke. "My lord, their tactics were unexpected. They fight with precision, with an understanding of warfare beyond their technology level." Zaltoran's eyes blazed. "Then we crush them before they can become a real threat. Assemble the War Council. We will mobilize the full strength of the Imperial Armada." The Empire had underestimated humanity once. It would not happen again. Aboard the Valkyrie, the first War Council of humanity's new offensive had begun. Kane stood at the center of a war table, surrounded by high-ranking officers, resistance leaders, and Earth's brightest minds. "We have two options," Kane began. "We rebuild and prepare for the Empire's retaliation, or we strike first and take this war to them." The room was silent for a moment. Then Vasquez spoke. "We just proved we can beat them. If we wait, they'll come at us with overwhelming force. We need to hit them where it hurts before they get the chance." Jonas, now recognized as a hero among the resistance, leaned forward. "We have a fleet now. We have an army. And we have something they don't expect. Us. We don't fight like them. We don't follow their rules. That's our advantage." Kane nodded. "Agreed. We need intelligence, targets, and a plan. If we hit the right places, we can cripple them before they can retaliate." One of the officers hesitated. "But sir, we're talking about attacking the heart of the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Even with our recent victory, we're still outmatched." Kane's expression hardened. "Then we make sure they never see us coming." A new war had begun. And this time, humanity wasn't fighting for survival. They were fighting for vengeance. The stars had been silent for too long. The Galactic Empire, humiliated and wounded, was preparing for its counterattack. But they would soon learn a lesson they would never forget. Humanity did not wait for its enemies to come knocking. Aboard the UNS Valkyrie, Admiral Elias Kane stood before a massive holographic map of the Empire's territories. Human forces had reclaimed Earth, but that was only the beginning. The real war was about to start. "We can't hold Earth forever if we just sit here," Kane said, addressing the War Council. "The Empire will come with overwhelming force. Our only option is to make sure they never get the chance." Commander Renfield gestured to the map. "We've identified key supply routes, shipyards, and command stations. If we strike fast and hard, we can disrupt their war machine before it can fully mobilize." Colonel Vasquez leaned forward. "Hit them where it hurts before they even know we're coming." "I like it." Jonas, sitting among the resistance leaders, nodded. "We don't fight their war. We fight our way. Guerrilla tactics, stealth strikes, hit and fade. Make them bleed until they have nothing left to throw at us." Kane's lips curled into a grim smile. Then it settled. "We go on the offensive." The first target was an Imperial supply depot orbiting a barren moon in the far reaches of their territory. It was heavily guarded but never expected an attack this deep in Imperial space. That was humanity's advantage. In the cold silence of space, human warships drifted like ghosts. Their stealth systems kept them hidden, creeping closer to the unsuspecting enemy. "Phase 1, go," Kane ordered. Missiles erupted from the void, striking the station's power cores before the alarms could even blare. Explosions rippled across its structure, sending debris flying into space. Before the enemy could react, human boarding pods smashed into the hull. Jonas and his strike team poured out, weapons ready. They moved like shadows, cutting through Imperial forces with brutal efficiency. The enemy never stood a chance. Within minutes, the station was in flames, its supplies destroyed, its commanders dead. Mission accomplished, Vasquez reported as the human forces retreated back to their ships. The Empire had just been struck inside its own borders, and it would not be the last time. News of the attack sent shockwaves through the Empire. Warlord Saul Turin's claws scraped against his throne as he watched footage of the destruction. "They dare strike at us," he roared. "They are insects, nothing more." His advisors remained silent, terrified of his fury. A general hesitated before speaking. "My lord, they are using tactics we are unprepared for. Our fleets are designed for direct engagement, not this warfare from the shadows." Zalturin's rage burned, but he knew the truth. Humanity was not fighting like any enemy before them, and that made them dangerous. "Then we must draw them out," Zalturin growled. "Find their fleet. Find their leaders. We will crush them before they can spread further." But humanity was already moving. One by one, key Imperial facilities fell to their relentless assaults. Shipyards burned. Supply chains crumbled. Entire fleets were left stranded without fuel. The Empire, once unchallenged, now found itself on the defensive. And then, humanity's boldest move yet, their fleet emerged from the darkness on the edge of the Imperial homeworld sector. The UNS Valkyrie stood at the front of the Armada, a symbol of defiance. Kane stared at the enemy's stronghold on the view screen. "They wanted war," he said. "Now they have it." The order was given. Humanity struck with fire and fury. And for the first time in history, the Galactic Empire knew fear.